This is so annoying. Why does everything have to be so boring?
My maker told his tale. And I will tell you mine. I remember pieces. Memories of different men. And I saw it. Your name. Victor Frankenstein.
Hello, guys. So I just watched Benicio del Toro's Frankenstein on Netflix, and I have some thoughts. I hope you guys will entertain me with your attention for this matter. um, so it's a gorgeous film, and Del Toro, as usual, knocks it out of the park with his directorial, let's say, finesse and his eye for design and detail and tone, which he's knocks out of the park. But I do want to talk a little bit about how this is essentially an expression or a, let's say, a result of our ever shifting, very slightly moving towards progress culture that we're currently living in. So first, let's get into the hype. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about what I liked about Del Toro's Frankenstein, why I thought it was a really great movie, and I do recommend it. But I'm also going to contrast it with Mary Shelley's original novelization, some of the changes that were made, and how I think this is essentially a microcosm of our ever shifting towards progress culture. Okay, if you're a book purist, I think you might enjoy this. But let's get into it. So first, the hype. Del Toro's project Frankenstein. It was a 30-year passion project. Oscar Isaac plays Victor, Jacob Elordi as the creature, Mia Goth, Christoph Waltz, and all the rest. He calls Shelley's novel his Bible, an atheist Bible, according to Del Toro, who is an atheist. But here's the reality. It's visually stunning, gothic, horror, gore, Bernie Wrightson vibes, but it's Del Toro's redemption arc. It's not Mary Shelley's cautionary tale. And yeah, there's a little bit of subversion that creeps in as well, which I don't know if people are really talking about it enough. So let's break it down. First of all, who is Benicio del Toro? You guys know he made Kronos, Mimic, underrated bug horror in my opinion. Hellboy, The Golden Army. Personally, I like the second Hellboy more. I don't know, it's just something about the way it was done. Pan's Labyrinth, great movie, everybody knows it. Blade 2, which is sometimes it's my favorite Blade, sometimes it's the second. It's right up there with the first one. But his core drive, though, what is the thing that makes Del Toro's movies stand out? What is it the thing that he does well? He humanizes his monsters, right? So he did an interview for NPR, and in 2011, I believe they were talking about a book about vampires. And he said, I have an intense relationship with monsters. They're eternal, reflecting human fears and curiosities. He is an atheist but calls monsters his patron saints of imperfection. Shape of Water, Fishman romance. Hellboy, demonic hero. The pattern is monsters are misunderstood outsiders, misfits, right? And humans are the real monsters. You can see this also in Pan's Labyrinth, for example. So that's what we know about Benicio del Toro, really, really condensed. Okay, so let's look at Mary Shelley. This is the person who Del Toro is adapting. Born in 1797, Mary Shelley was the daughter of Mary Wollstonecraft. Wollstonecraft was the proto-feminist. She was the feminist before we had a name for it. She wrote a book called A Vindication of the Rights of Woman, and William Godwin, who is also the father, anarchist philosopher, anarchists. You know, you guys have heard about those guys lately, right? At 16, Mary Shelley eloped with poet Percy Shelley. And Percy Shelley was already married, so he basically was cheating on his wife with Mary Shelley, and they eloped together. In 1816, Mary Shelley was involved with a ghost story contest with Lord Byron and John Polidori. That's where Frankenstein was born. She was 18. She was an atheist, but she was steeped in Christian imagery because this was the world of that era of time, right? Even if you were an atheist, you were kind of like an outsider for that because everybody else was religious, and in particular, they were Christian. So she was sort of imbuing some of the Christian things that she saw into her book, Adam, the Fall, Hubris, etc. Her core theme was man trying to play God will result in disaster, which it did. The creature was intelligent, vengeful, a fallen Adam, not innocent. Her warning was unchecked ambition destroys. So these are like the central themes of the Frankenstein book. But Del Toro twists them a little bit. And again, I'm not saying this to throw shade at Del Toro's movie. It was a good movie and I recommend it. But I do want you guys to see how things move in very small steps. And it's usually done under the guise of, oh, it's this person's interpretation. And the idea of interpretation comes from postmodern thought. Just something to think about. But anyway, how does Del Toro change things? Well, let's go point by point. 1, the creature. In the book, the creature is a large, lumbering, eloquent, deliberately murderous character. So he's intelligent, self-taught, and he is very let's say conniving and able to plan things out. So he deliberately murders William, who is the brother of Frankenstein, Henry Clerval, Elizabeth, which is the love interest character. The creature also quotes Milton and sees himself as a fallen Adam. But in the film, the monster is much more sympathetic. He is childlike. Everybody he kills is, if anything, it's either by accident or in self-defense. So it's sort of justified murder. His innocence is sort of presented as almost Christ-like. And he smiles at the sunrise at the end of the film. Why this matters is it removes the monster's moral agency. And it almost also takes a little bit away from the idea of Dr. Frankenstein playing God to begin with, since the hubris is, if you do this, it will result in disaster because you are not, in fact, God, right? So how does this differ from the book? In the book, the family of Dr. Frankenstein is presented firstly very different for Victor. His mother dies of scarlet fever as opposed to some kind of medical mishap. And also his father, and this is the most important thing in my opinion, in the book, the father is benevolent and does public service, and he is seen as a nice man who raised a good family. In the movie, though, they replaced the father with a character named Baron Leopold, who's like a stepfather, and he is played by Charles Dance from Game of Thrones. He is cold, neglectful, and his mom dies from medical malpractice, essentially. This matters because it changes the tone of, again, it moves everything towards blaming something external, which ultimately comes back to patriarchy. The father is to blame for Victor's missteps in the story, as opposed to Victor's own hubris around trying to play God. You see how this moves the agency away from science as having the potential for destruction, and when it becomes arrogant, when it becomes obsessed with trying to basically remove that which we all as humans have to live with, which is our own mortality. When you try to like address that with science, there are disastrous consequences, because you can't think about Brian, I think his name is Brian Johnson, the current man who's trying to live forever, and all the steps that he's taking to do this. He's literally getting blood transfusions from his son. It's absolutely demonic. So that's something that should be explored as a story for the tragedy that it will inevitably cause. And this is coming from Mary Shelley, who herself was a very progressive atheist. But going back to the way they changed it is, instead of it being scientific or intellectual hubris that brought us to this sad conclusion, instead we change the story to where it is because of father abuse, or this sort of like evil father figure that essentially passes generational trauma to his son, who his son Victor, who then passes it on to the creature. And that's how they change the story. And I don't think that's insignificant. I think that's actually really important to look at. So that's a really big thing that they changed in the film. And this is not necessarily something that had to change. This is another thing that I like to harp on about. I mean, some people might think that I'm being a little bit pedantic or nitpicky with things, but this is a very significant change. This isn't like, changing a character's race or something, which normally people get up in arms about. This is actually changing the philosophical core of the film, okay? Of the story, rather. All right, so Elizabeth, this is another one. It's a little bit on the nose, but I think it's important too, because it shows you how far we've come. Remember, Mary Shelley was progressive for her time. So she was doing things that was a pretty radical for the time period. I'll just put it that way. So Elizabeth in the book, who is the sort of love interest to Dr. Frankenstein, she is passive, and she is a fiance of Victor. She is domestic and basically a very feminine character, appropriate for the time period, relatively innocent and passive. And she is murdered on her wedding night by the creature, intentionally, to hurt Victor. In the movie, though, she is a fiery, independent woman who is very smart and into insects. She's an etymologist. She is the moral center of the film. She becomes like she's the person who distinguishes right and wrong just by being there, right?
His wounds. You wounded him like that.
No. Yeah. William, you did it. It's so strong.
Why is he chained here?
And it doesn't know any better.
But you do.
And she dies in the creature's arms by accident. And it's actually made to look as though Victor killed her. This matters because, first of all, it's doing the girl boss thing, of course, which is like completely like anachronistic for the time period, but even anachronistic for Mary Shelley's book. So then we have the ending. And just like trying to get through this relatively quickly here. I know there's a lot here. In the book, Victor dies unrepentant. So he never changes his mind about the creature, and it remains unresolved, which is meant to be tragic because it means that Victor's pride he never humbles himself before what he has done. The creature, because he cannot die, vows self-immolation. It's absolute despair, because the creature is alone and miserable. And this is because the creature originally asks in the book and the movie for Victor to create for him a helpmate, a Eve, as it were, a partner. And in the book, Victor starts to do that, but then he realizes that he doesn't want to do that, it's something that he doesn't want to give the creature, so he tears the Eve, the other, let's say the bride of Frankenstein, limb from limb on the table as the creature watches and denies that to him. And this is supposed to be another level of tragedy. But this isn't in the book at all, or in the movie, rather. It's not in the movie at all. Instead, you got basically Frankenstein just says, no, I'm not going to do that. In the film, though, another thing that changes is rather than the Victor dying unrepentant and the creature vowing self-immolation, Victor begs for forgiveness. So he does, in fact, humble himself at the end, and the creature forgives him and does so symbolically by freeing the ship that he was on. Spoilers for Frankenstein, by the way. And gazes at the sunshine at the end of the movie, presuming that the creature is going to live his life. Okay, so this is like a redemption arc for both characters. It matters because in the book, it's a tragedy and it's supposed to be cautionary. We're supposed to see this as, not a happy ending, because it's not supposed to be a happy ending, because it was never meant to be a happy ending. It was always doomed to fail. But in the film, it becomes a kind of therapy session of dealing with trauma. Of course, there are some characters that were simply omitted from the book, and again, we can get into why those matter. I think that a lot of it has to do with the fact that the creature in the book is evil and angry and wrathful, and essentially tries to destroy Victor's life by taking everything away from him that he loves. And some of that involves other characters, like I believe there's a house servant that is killed, for example, and framed for the murder of his brother. But because that would, in fact, take sympathy away from the creature, I think it was left out of the movie. So what is going on here? Well, I think it's part of a larger pattern that we've been seeing. So you might have noticed that men are denigrated in films and have been for the better part of 20 years or so. In some ways, it's subtle, and in many ways, it's really, really obvious. And they've done this particularly with franchises that have been enjoyed by and for men. Okay. So we can look at one of the things that they've done is they have villainized fatherhood in particular. And there are some examples. In fact, Del Toro himself has done this, and I think I brought this up before. The main villain in Pan's Labyrinth is none of the supernatural creatures, not even the man who eats children, but actually it's the stepfather. And it's the same exact thing in Frankenstein. The villain is a stepfather that was created specifically to be the source of Victor's trauma. And it's sort of like, why is this even being proposed? It's like we have so little regard for fatherhood in our popular culture that we can just show it being like the worst thing ever, to the point where, well, why aren't people getting married? Why aren't people getting together and having kids? It's like it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. And on the opposite side of that, we deify motherhood, especially single motherhood. Again, I can mention Ophelia's surrogate mother from Pan's Labyrinth, who is, because her actual mother dies, because that has to happen as well. And so she gets an adopted mother, and then she learns that she actually has another spiritual mother in the sort of like afterlife. So it's just part of his pattern. You make the monsters virtuous, and then you make the humans not just flawed, but almost like evil. And this is something we've seen with films made by other creators. Like, look at Prey, the Predator film that came out before the most recent Predator film, where the predator is female. The tribal woman obviously teams up with them, and they go up against the colonizers, the Spanish colonizers. It's so obvious what is going on. But let's be like, because it feels like I'm really dogging this movie, and all I'm doing is I'm pointing out the pattern that I'm seeing. And it's not a pattern that's happened in the past 20 years or even in my lifetime. It's a pattern that goes all the way back to the Enlightenment. And I can come back with another video about that if you guys are interested. But what I want to get to is that remember that Mary Shelley was herself a very like far left radical feminist who was like she would go to orgies, she eloped with a married man, she would basically was an atheist, which was kind of like a weird thing at the time. And she still, because she was operating within a time period where the Christian framework was everywhere. So it was like, even if you're an atheist, you couldn't really escape it because you would see the world in this framing anyhow. And so Frankenstein feels really conservative, like the original book does, simply because of the portrayals of, women, and like the idea that the creature himself was reading like, Paradise Lost and making references to biblical things. We would see that as pretty conservative for the time, but she was not. She was like really out there. And we have gone so far since then that we look at that and we see it as pretty conservative. Now we're at the point where, the women have to be like, the women from the Victorian era have to be scientists and girl bosses. I mean, I can name some other ideas. I'm sure you guys can think of some. If you remember, the Castlevania animated series on Netflix also had a girl boss super doctor character that Dracula fell in love with, probably for her intelligence and her strong will, instead of it just simply being like something that made sense for the context. And so what I'm saying is that this little march forward takes very small steps, and wokeness isn't always in your face. Sometimes, and actually very often, it's so subtle, and it's it's couched in something that is actually really well made, that you might not notice it, or you might accept it as normal. And that's the thing that we should be guarded against. I'm not saying you can't enjoy this movie or any other progressive products, because I still do. But when you understand what's happening, it makes it easier for you to enjoy it, and then still be able to like be like, okay, yeah, I see what you're trying to do there. It's not going to work on me, but I'll just like enjoy this for what it is. So getting back to Del Toro's book, his movie adaptation of the book, it's great. It has great cinematography. It's like a Gothic, Victorian painting come to life. It's got a great score by Alexandra Desplat. Hopefully I'm not butchering that. It's got great performances. I think Oscar Isaac is probably the strongest one. Yeah, definitely the best performance was his. I was very impressed with that. And I think that it is a good movie. I would give it like a 7.8 out of 10. It's definitely a visual masterpiece, and it does change things, so you have to like be okay with that. But if you understand that, then this might be okay for you to like enjoy. If you want monster comfort food, then watch Del Toro's version of Frankenstein. But if you want Shelley's warning, read the book. Here's like this the whole thing about the movie is kind of summed up in one line that the creature gives to Victor. The creature says, "You gave me life, but never love." And if Mary Shelley was able to, let's say, add to that, at least like assuming that she didn't adopt completely like the spirit of the age of today, she might have added, "And that's why I'll destroy you," because that's what the creature was. So anyway, if you're a book nerd and you read the book, let me know what you guys think. If you enjoyed Frankenstein, I think that even books by these kinds of people have something to offer. Definitely cautionary tales are always welcome. So, did you see Frankenstein by Del Toro? What did you think? Did you like it? Let me know. And yeah, please subscribe to this channel for more. I will do a video on Predator Badlands as soon as I get a chance to watch it. So thanks guys for coming on the show today. If you like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you guys think about the movie and my thoughts on it compared to the book. And please share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's video about Frankenstein. And I'll see you guys in the next one.
This is so annoying. Why does everything have to be so boring?